Watch the video version of this podcast at outlatewithdavid.com.
Hi, I'm David Cotton. I'm a father, a brother, a son. I'm a retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General, a former senior executive in the Department of Defense, a corporate vice president, and now a life coach. At the age of 59, I told my wife, my kids, and the world, I'm gay. Join me as I talk with others who've made this coming out journey late in life to become who they really are.
You're listening to Out Late with David.
My guest today is well known as the host of the popular podcast Life Uncloseted, as well as 40 Plus Gay Men Gay Talk. He is a sought-after public speaker and a successful life coach. Joining me today, author of the book Frank the My Dear I'm Gay, Rick Clemons. Rick, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. You have become one of the most well-known authorities in this field. Between you, growing rainbows, and making gay history is what got me through my coming out process. Yeah. Is it right to say that helping men coming out of the closet and beyond has become kind of your life's work?
Yeah, it has. I mean, I've been doing it since 2009. Somebody had told me in 1999 I was going to be doing this. I'm like, no, you're crazy, because between divorce and everything else, I'm like, I don't think so. But I have a full-time gig that I do now as a coach, as well as this. So I balance it all out. But yes, I absolutely still am coaching gay men on all sorts of stuff, not just coming out. But 50% of them are guys in midlife coming out of the closet.
So let's get to your story. It's interesting. You were married and you had kids.
Yep.
And if I recall, you first came out in your teens and then in and out. So what happened?
You know, the biggest thing that happened was I was very naive at 19 when I did come out. I wasn't ready. I mean, I was, but I wasn't. I mean, I'd never had any kind of sexual intercourse with anybody. I mean, I'd messed around with some gals and stuff, and I knew what I was into. I knew there was men, but it was such a, we were talking in the mid 80s or beginning of the 80s, actually 82, 83 is when this was happening for me. When I came out to my parents, they said, no. I did go visit a pastor and talked with him. But as I say in my book, it really didn't work, Mom and Dad, because he was really, really hot. He was really a sexy guy. And I'm like, well, that's pretty bad that I'm, jonesing over the pastor. But I did have a moment where I'm like, okay, maybe this is just a passing phase for me. And it wasn't. Obviously at 36 I finally did come out, but it was a lot of family pressure, a lot of fear, a lot of naiveness on my side. To be honest, I just didn't have what it took to take a stand, and I think many guys feel that.
Did your religious upbringing have a factor on that as well?
There was some influence, honestly, David, but I would say that probably wasn't the biggest influence. It was more, I'm going to disappoint my family. I had a very overbearing father who's like, nope, you're not going to be this, and you're going to get it together, and you're going to da-da-da. And that's what I ended up doing. I'm like, okay. And then once I realized I can do that life and I can do the other life, it wasn't so painful, even though it was.
Yeah, that fear and disappointing the family is the biggest thing I hear from the guys I talk to. They don't want to disappoint their parents or their spouse either, let them down. They figure, I married them. I was in love. What's going on in my head? Why have I changed? Why can't I just not, get over it,
Yep. And that's a tough dialogue in your own head. I mean, I did it I met my wife shortly after I graduated college, and there was a connection. I was never, I didn't hate having sex with her, but it, every chance I got, there was other things I was more interested in looking at. And as I started to venture into that world, which is not one of the things I'm most proud of, I cheated the entire time I was with my wife. And I've talked about this numerous times, so this is no new news to anybody who may have heard me talk before. And I don't say that from an egoic space. I'm living and telling my truth. And that was probably the hardest thing for me to realize that this doesn't feel good, but I'm going to do it because ironically it feels good. It was how do I keep my sanity and balance through all these things? And that's a really tough way to be in the world. But man, David, did I learn a lot about that. Like that whole process of hiding and living a dual life really taught me about the conflicts that we have in our own heads.
What was it that resolved that conflict? You know, when was that shift to get to the Rick you have today, which is what you see is what you get versus I'm holding back in some level?
Couple of things. There was a lot of people who are like, you never smile. You never seem happy. I'm like, I'm not. The bigger piece of the puzzle, which is part of what's in Frankly, My Dear, I'm Gay, is I was in London. I had a free evening all to myself, even though I was traveling for work. And I in a very petrified way, showed up in a gay bar by myself for the very first time. I'd been to gay bars with other people, but I never had walked in one by myself. And a guy came up and started chatting me up. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. We had a wonderful evening. We went out, drank a little more, danced a little more. And then the inevitable happened, like, so would you like to come back to my room? And it was so interesting, David, because actually my head just kind of clicked into place. Like, okay, sure, we could do this. Been there, done that. Let's go. And he was handsome, and, you know, in my mind, he was cute and gorgeous and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, we'd had some feeling moments on the dance floor. So I'm like, this could be really fun, right? It never went there. It never went there. We stayed in his hotel the whole night, but it was, when I speak about this on stage, I talk about like, that was the night there was no sex. I fell in love and I fell apart, because for the first time I experienced something beyond wham, bam, thank you, sir. I could feel it. I could see it. And, you know, it was a beautiful moment, and it lasted for about 4 months. It lasted long enough in that week. That was the week I came out to my wife. I came home and said, we got to talk. And it was that glimpse of, here's the reality. I can actually see it, which was obviously something that was blindsided by me for many years, David. I couldn't see the other side. I could see the sex, but I couldn't see the intimacy. I couldn't see what would it look like to have a relationship with a guy, even though I wanted it. So those were the two things that kind of broke the camel's back, so to speak.
Yeah, that intimacy of just the moment and the person and their presence, not sex. I know a lot of people have a hard time understanding that. I talk to clients and they say, you know, I know how I feel, but I've never had anything with a guy, but I just know that I just don't get that connection. And how could a guy ever be in love with another guy? And then as you describe, it happens when you least expect it. It
and sometimes that's the biggest piece, is that can be the thing that scares you to death too. It's like, okay, I could do sex. I mean, a really good friend of mine, Dr. Joe Court, he's another sexologist and really well known in our community. He talks about the transactional sex that men have. He talks a lot about this. And a lot of people push back like, no, guys don't have sex with other guys and it's just sex. I'm like, yes, it is. There are a lot of guys who could have sex with other guys. In fact, a lot of them are the guys that are down low. You'll see them on the apps, like down low, I just want to get off. But you can always tell when it's just transactional and I'm kind of generalizing here, but it's transactional when, oh no kissing. No kissing. No kissing whatsoever. Then it's kind of a transactional. It's very intimate at that point, right? Yeah. Exactly. And I think I know some open
couples, that's one of the rules they have is, you know, they're an open couple, but it's no kissing allowed, because that's the intimate private space. You're not going to break that.
And, you know, we all create those rules. You know, we all find our pathway through that stuff. But I've worked with so many clients that they're like, well, then that just takes it to a whole new level. I'm like, yes, but if you don't go to that next level of understanding beyond transactional sex to intimacy, you may be living as a gay man, I'm just living on sex, which many gay men do. And that's why there's a lot of healing still to be done in our beautiful world.
So you said this was the moment where you then came home and you came out to your spouse. Tell me about that process and how that worked and how it was received.
Well, it's not pretty, to say the least. I was actually really nervous. I mean, I was on a high because I had left London and I'd flown all the way to Los Angeles, and I felt something. I mean, I was a giddy little schoolboy all that flight, like, okay. And I also was very nervous because the whole time I was on that flight, I wrote out every reason that this is stupid and this is great and this is stupid and this is great. because I had never probably been that committed to like, we're doing this, aren't we? We're really, really doing this. And even when I landed and called her and said, hey, I'm on the ground, as I walked out of the airport and got to my car and got in, I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I can do this. And all the way down the 405 freeway from LA to South Orange County, I was a nervous wreck. There were a couple of times I actually looked in the rearview mirror and saw semis and thought, you know what, I could just spin that wheel. Yeah. I could just spin that wheel and nobody would know the difference.
I've been there.
But when I did walk in that house, she was excited to see me. I mean, we had 2 little girls. You know, she'd been stuck for almost, 8-10 days, being mom, working mom, all that sort of stuff. And I thought, it's either now or never. I said, I'm happy to see you too, but we need to talk. And that didn't set well, obviously, because like, wait, you walk in and that's the first thing you say is we need to talk. And then we got the girls off to bed. And as soon as we got them in bed, she goes, okay, what's up? I said, I told you once I had these same-sex attractions and I can't do this anymore. I'm gay. And it devastated. I'm trying to remember exactly if I left that night or it was the next day. But it wasn't pretty. I mean, and I didn't know where I was going. I made good money, but we didn't have like, we didn't have the second house at the beach or anything at that point. So it was heartbreaking, freeing, exciting, scary. You just name the adjectives. It was all of it. And it hurt. It hurt because I knew I was hurting her. It hurt because I knew I was hurting my babies. My youngest one was only 9 months old at that time. So I knew the path I'd just put us on was going to be really hard as a parent. I mean, this is life-changing stuff that happens. And, you know, those who are on the other side, they don't see it coming. A lot of times I don't think us on this side see it coming until it actually happens.
It might just snuck up on me. I mean, it was a TV moment based on what was in my head. You know, I decided, this is the time to tell.
Well, how do I know it's the right time? You'll know. You will know.
You'll know.
Only you will know. I mean, there may be others, but it's always so interesting when people ask that question. I'm like, you know, you'll know as your coach. I'll help you kind of start to figure it out. But I'm not going to say, I don't have a rainbow magic wand that says, poof, here it is. This is the date.
No.
And I think that's a big
piece. And
it's
whether you're coming out to your spouse or your parents or friends, it's true. When you know, you know. I assume you're able to then successfully co-parent, because I hear that as a concern too with guys say, you know, I don't want to lose my connection to my child and my, you know, the mother of my child. I want to have some relationship going forward. How were you able to balance that out and actually meet what you wanted to do to be there present for your kids?
It took a little bit of work. I mean, we started out with a crazy schedule of like every 2 to 3 days with the kids were going back and forth between quote households, so to speak. There was even a time once I moved out of the area that I would drive down and stay in her house a couple of nights a week and then go back to my house. There was a time when the girls were with me and my partner, now husband, and we would get on trains to go to Orange County from the Inland Empire in California, and we would be up at the crack of dawn, and girls were on trains getting to Orange County. I'd drop them at their schools, and I'd go to mid-Orange County and work, and then come down, pick them up at school, get on a train, go home. I mean, we did that life for almost a year, and then I finally said, we got to do something. This is not good for the kids. And long story short, lots of things had happened, and she moved closer to us. We've all grown through that. The kids are now 20. Oof, I almost said 24, but one of them's going to be 25 in a few days here. So I'm like 25 and 28. So, and they're great. They're beautiful, amazing, strong young women.
More of my interview with Rick in just a moment. But first, I'd like to recommend a book I found helpful on my coming out journey. The book is by today's guest, entitled, Frankly, My Dear, I'm Gay. It's part memoir and part self-help book as he tells the story of his own coming out journey as a gay parent. He also covers topics about life after coming out. he sprinkles a few thought-provoking exercises into his story that you'll no doubt find helpful on your journey. Again, the book is Frankly, My Dear, I'm Gay, A Late Bloomer's Guide to Coming Out by Rick Clemons. For more books and online resources about coming out late in life, visit outlatewithdavid.com.
You're listening to Out Late with David.
Now back to more of my conversation with Rick.
You've met with a lot of men, heard a lot of their stories, their process, their concerns, what went through their head. Is there anything that's like the common thread that you noticed for closeted men coming out?
Oh, we could go a whole show just on that. There are some definite threads. It's kind of like the thought's always been there. It's like the pebble in the shoe. One of the most interesting things that I've found, David, in my practice is the number of men and women. So I'm going to say men and women who are in the couple, how consistently there has been a complete depletion of sex life in their relationship. We're better off as roommates and friends sort of mentality, and a huge level of codependence in the relationship. Those things kind of shocked me until I started seeing the consistent pattern of like, yeah, we haven't had sex in 2 to 5, I mean, as high as 10 years. We haven't been intimate in that long.
Wow.
Codependency really surprised me, but then it didn't surprise me. Like, it's almost like they both leaned on the dependency of each other.
Or the identity, the prime identity is that as a couple, not as an individual in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's not a lot of individuality identity going on. And that happens for the guys too. I mean, many of them are like, I don't know who I really am. In fact, one of the things that was hardest for me was I met my wife, as I already shared, right out of college. And so then suddenly, and my codependence shows up in about what I'm about to share. She was there all the time. I let her be in my place when she could get off campus and be with me. And suddenly I needed that. I needed that camaraderie. I needed that like constant person. And I know in my own heart that was part of the reason I struggled so much when I did come out. Like, I just need a man. I just need somebody. I need somebody or I can't make it. And until I actually allow myself to take that break and let that like be my truth, that I can be on my own, man, I struggled. I've got a young guy I'm working with right now. It's only been 6 years. He's petrified of what's it going to be like to go home and be with myself. I'm like, that's absolutely beautiful, man.
It's I put it in like you need to love yourself first before you can really extend yourself to somebody else. Yeah, you want to go out there and meet and you want to partner up. You want to get back to your normal where you come home to somebody every day. But you got to sit in your own skin and really relish the moment and find joy in that.
There's just so many ways through this, as you well know, David, that there is I can't give anybody like, here's the blueprint. Here's what you need to do, because there's so much dynamics in it. And the only thing I can say is continue to trust yourself, which is hard because we've grown up not trusting ourselves because we can't talk about this. So there's a distrust. Trust yourself and go figure out who you are. Because if you come to the table as who you are, you're going to be much more attractive to the guy you're trying to attract to you.
So what's the biggest lie that a closeted man tells himself?
That it's a passing phase. I'm just wanting to experiment. I'm just wanting to try it. Now, I've been doing this since 2009. I don't know how many guys for sure. I used to keep track of the number. I would say I'm close to probably 600-700 guys I've coached since then, maybe more if I really did the math. Out of that entire group, I would say less than 10 guys backed out and said, nope, this wasn't for me. It truly was like, I need to have a transactional experience. One guy, he really enjoyed it, but he goes, yeah, I can't really see doing this with a guy day in and day out. And it's not my role as a coach to go, come on, you did it. Stick with it. You got to go after the man. You got to stick. No, my goal as a coach is like, I want you to find your truth. And if that truth is what works and that resonates with you, then great. That's where I want you to be.
As a life coach, I'm committed to help you discover the passions in your life and help you map a course to achieve the things you really want. Together, we will unwind those persistent self-doubts that are holding you back. You'll begin to see your passions more clearly and set achievable goals. Throughout your journey, I'll be there to challenge and encourage you in moving forward to discover your authentic self. For more information about my personal life coaching services, or to arrange a complimentary consultation, visit davidcottoncoaching.com.
You're listening to Out Late with David.
So you have your new podcast, or it's newer, 40 plus gay men, gay talk, and you talk about a lot of issues. I really enjoy it, by the way. Older men, but I'd say it really all men really apply when I listen to it.
Yep.
But you're very candid about stuff about erectile dysfunction, lack of sexual interest, medication. Why is it important for you to be so honest about your own experiences and bring this information forward?
Well, because I want guys to just know you're not alone. Yeah, my penis isn't working right now. Okay, well, okay, But then I find ways to make it work, I recently did one with a guy who's created I'm just going to call it's an interesting version of a cock ring that actually stimulates you without you feeling like you're cut off. And guys were like, I hope he gave you a sample of it and everything. I'm like, well, not yet. We're working on that. But they're like, I could never talk about this stuff. I'm like, that's why we have 40 plus gay men, gay talk, because we're not talking about the stuff we need to talk about.
One thing you've always been clear about, it's the importance of living your authentic life. And so for you, what does it mean to be authentic?
So when I started leaning into what is this I really do? And yes, I help men come out of the closet, right? But I started feeling this calling to be a bigger voice in a different way. And so I worked with my different marketing person. And she asked 3 very pointed questions, David. She said, what was the thing that you were struggling with the most before you came out? And I said, I was afraid. She goes, okay, cool. She goes, but as you were afraid, what else was happening when you were in that fear? I could come up with every excuse why this would never work. I was Mr. Excuse Maker. And she goes, oh, interesting. She goes, but you talk a lot about being authentic, but she goes, was that really what it was? I said, authenticity is one piece of it, but I want to just be unapologetic about who I am in the world.
Man.
And she got really quiet. And she goes, you know what you do for people, but you just now said it in a completely different way. She goes, you help them dump their excuses, face their fears, and unapologetically be who they are. And for me, David, that was when I really got my authenticity. I don't want to apologize. To me, being authentic is being unapologetic and being just the full truth of you. That's it. And sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow.
What's on your horizon personally and professionally?
Oh, that's a good question. Possibly a 3rd podcast. I know that sounds crazy. But that's coupled with a brand new book that I'm currently shopping, trying to get out there with an agent, with a major publisher. I would really like to go major publishing this go around. It's called Unapologetic. That's the book. That's all I'm going to share for now because it's always subject, but that will be the title of the book. And it's coming from that space of, yes, but it's coming from all that space of what I've learned over actually the years of doing Life Uncloseted. So for the last 2.5, almost 3 years, I've been taking in the content and the ideas and things people have said and things that I've adjusted to, like, okay, well, what does it mean to be truly living your life uncloseted, but also being unapologetically yourself in the world? And that's become what the book has become. And so that's on the horizon. I'm trustful that this year it will get an agent and representation. And if it doesn't, it will get published. It will get published one way or the other. So that's kind of the biggest stuff. I may wrap up a podcast. I'm still on the fence about Life Uncloseted. But we're at 650. We will be at 650 some episodes come June or July. Wow. And I love that podcast, but I almost feel like I need to clear some energy for the next phase of whatever it is. And other than that, just trying to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. So that's the biggest things.
Maybe it's like coming out. You'll know it when the time is right.
Yes. Yep. I really appreciate all the beautiful stories people have shared about coming out of cancer and, different relationships and moving into who you are and taking risks in a job. I had some really amazing guests who told some amazing, heartfelt, heart-centered stories about their own version of a closet. I realized when I hit the 600 episode, I wanted to go back and start being true to my community. Like Life Uncloseted is about living your life uncloseted as an LGBTQ plus person. I feel like the time is right to get back centered on my community because of everything that's going on in the world around LGBTQ plus rights and all these things. So we'll see if it continues to blossom. Then I feed off of my own fun. And if it's going really well, then we could go for another 600 episodes.
As we leave, what is the one message you'd like the men who are coming out later in life to know and believe while they're on their own journey?
That's a great question, David. And I'm going to leave it with a phrase that I say every time I have the privilege of being on a stage. Whether I'm talking to the LGBTQ community or I'm talking to college students or I'm talking to a business group about, creating this unapologetic way of being in the world. And I do this talk when I'm with entrepreneurs and business people, because it's like, if you're going to build a business, you need to be unapologetic about it. You need to own every step of it. Don't let those fears get in the way. Don't let the excuses. And regardless of how that talk, it's called Leap Out of Your Status Quo Life. It's one of my favorite talks to do. I always bring it back at the very end to the reason that most people never get to where they're going. They never get past those excuses and those fears and never feel the thrill of living an unapologetic life is because they don't understand this. The truth of who you are is far more powerful than the false truth you're pretending to be. So go show the world who you are. And I believe in that statement 100%. It's mine. I love getting to share that. I say it to myself all the time. Like when I'm in my stuff, I'm like, okay, the truth of who you are is far more powerful than who you're pretending to be right now. So come on, go show people. And it brings me around. It energizes me. Sometimes it slaps me upside the head and I go lay in bed and cry. And then I get up and I go again. But I truly believe that pretending to be something you're not is not a way to live. It's absolutely not a way to live.
That is powerful. And that's a perfect way to end today. Powerful stories, as you know, as we share these, it's going to help people that we don't even know. When they hear the stories, they'll be comforted to know they're not alone. So Rick Clemons, thank you so much for being here today. You remain one of the superstars to me. 600 plus episodes just in one podcast. It's incredible. Blessings to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you so much.
For me, the key takeaway in talking with Rick is the idea we all need to work past our limiting fears and show the world who we really are, living an unapologetic life. I know I denied my true identity for too many years, and doing such caused me and others pain. I might have lessened the pain had I taken action to live a more unapologetic and authentic life earlier. I can't change my past, but some listening now have the opportunity to change their future and address their limiting fears. This doesn't diminish these fears, but if we never get past the excuses for not exploring and addressing the fears with a coach, therapist, or confidant, you will, as Rick put it, never feel the thrill of living an unapologetic life. The truth of who you are is far more powerful than the false truth you're pretending to be. That's it for now. Join us next time on Out Late with David.
To hear more episodes, visit outlatewithdavid.com. And to learn more about personal life coaching services, go to davidcottoncoaching.com.